Welcome to Points in the Podcast. I am Elias Schuster, and as always, I am joined by Matt Rooney. I'm more chipper. Anyone who listened to the last episode,
Can I
was
ask why, other than it being the holidays?
well the holidays, but I just feel better. I don't,
Fair.
anybody who
Fair
listens to the
enough. Fair
last
enough.
episode, yeah, I was
We're
half
talking how
dead.
you personally feel, not necessarily how we
Oh
feel about the
yeah, no, not
Chicago
my
Bulls.
mental
Got it.
state.
That's where I was confused. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. My
Got it.
mental state's not much better than it would have been since October 25th when the Chicago Bulls season tipped off. But the way I'm physically feeling is more energy. I was not 100% better. I still got a little bit of a cold, but excited to have enough energy to see some family for Thanksgiving, to eat a lot of food, and be thankful for a lot of things in my life, one of which is not the Chicago Bulls. So,
hmm
Matt, are you looking forward to the holidays? It's a fun time of year. There's a lot of good basketball on. That's just not the Bulls.
Yeah, I love Thanksgiving. I think it's an underrated holiday. I think people don't give it enough credit. I feel like everybody's just looking forward to Christmas. I think we need to acknowledge Thanksgiving. I think it's a great meal. And I love turkey. I love corn casserole. I love mashed potatoes. I love the roll. I love all of it. So I think it's a great time of year. And
I
yeah,
think
there's like tomorrow's just all day sports. Black Friday is all day sports. Like
it's the best.
it's one of the best sports weekends of the year because you get everything except for baseball, and like who cares?
Yeah, you get college, loads of college basketball. Maui
Yeah.
Invitational last night was super fun, and then you get more of that today. You get
Friday has
loads.
college basketball. It has the NFL. It has the NBA. I'm probably going to the Blackhawks game, which is like 1 o'clock in
Let's
the
go.
afternoon. Like it's
That's
fantastic,
Yeah, that is
fantastic, and I
fantastic.
can watch something other than the Bulls that night.
Exactly. And the in-season tournament for the NBA this week, there's been some more games. Last night there was a lot. And look, honestly, I mean, we can just kind of get into it because this is where I wanted to start on today's show anyway, is this in-season tournament thing. We were skeptical, Matt. We posed a lot of questions about, whether or not players would really get up for this. And I still have a lot of questions about the longevity of whether or not something like this can work. But I do think there's been some ramped up intensity in some of these games, and we especially saw that last night. We're recording this on Wednesday, November 22nd. There was a slew of in-season tournament games last night. Five or so, I believe the number was five, and two out of those five, great games. We saw Philadelphia and Cleveland go back in a back and forth battle that Cleveland ended up edging out Philly, despite some late game heroics from Patrick Beverley, old Chicago Bull. And then we also saw a monstrous scoring game from both the Indiana Pacers and Atlanta Hawks. The final score of that game, 157 to 152. And Matt, that was in regulation.
Round of applause for anybody that took the alternate over 300. That had to be going off at like plus 1,000. So good on you if you grabbed that one.
I can't even believe. I would love to know. I'm sure we could find it somewhere, but what the over under was going into that
I'll
game,
grab that for you. It was Pacers,
because
Hawks,
yeah, it
odds.
probably was. It probably was high, just because those two teams have been to a
The
higher
total
scoring
was
team.
251 and a half.
All right.
So easy.
Yeah,
Easy.
easy hit. And you probably knew after the first quarter. I don't even know what the quarter by quarter was, but
Who cares? You knew. You knew.
yeah, you knew based the way that it was going. Tyrese Alberton in that game, outstanding, 37 points, 16 assists, 9 3-pointers. The Pacers, Buddy Hield hitting some huge shots down the stretch for them. And I watched those two games, Matt, specifically those two. A lot of the Philly Cleveland game, where even though the 76ers lost, Embiid and Tyrese Maxey combined for, I believe it was 62 points. And I just couldn't help but let an overwhelming sense of jealousy, take me over, because I wanted to enjoy the basketball. I wanted to just have the NBA fan in me excited for what I was seeing. But then there's the Bulls obsessor in me who couldn't watch it without feeling like this is on a level, the games that I'm watching right here, that are above and beyond anything that we could see from the Chicago Bulls team.
Yeah, I just get more like I'm starting to get more and more angry, especially this year, at missing
Yeah.
out on Tyrese Halliburton. Like I'm just the more I look back on it, like I know hindsight's 2020, but that was just the pick at the time. And like it seemed like everybody kind of knew it and they chose to take a backup forward who won six man of the year in the ACC. Like I know hindsight's 2020. I know the NBA is about taking high ceiling and talent and, projects and all that, but like my God, I'm
It's
so mad they missed out on Tyrese Halliburton.
I know, and
It's such a terrible miss.
And at the end of the day, it was, he several teams obviously passed on him that should have
Yeah.
gone after him, and it's just that's how the draft works. A lot of these guys fall, but there were conversations that year about him going as high as 4, where the Bulls were picking,
I
and you
feel
look.
like he was rumored to be, or the three options were Williams came on late, but a lot of people were saying Halliburton could go to the Bulls, and Isaac Okoro was the other name that was kind of getting floated with the Bulls. Like I feel like it was those
Yeah.
kind of three names were the three big ones, and
Well, and I remember writing a draft profile that
he picked the
year
worst of them.
about I remember writing a draft profile that offseason about Halliburton and about his potential fit and how the Bulls need that long-term answer at point guard. So knowing that, not only did they pass on him, but he is with a central division rival, which divisions, whatever. But the fact that he's over there with the Pacers, he's posting 37 points and 16 assists and scoring 157 points. And of course, the defense in that game is a whole other story for both teams. However, it's it stings. It for sure stings. And I think it just stings in general watching both those teams, both Atlanta and Indiana, who have a lot of young talent. They're built around a lot of young talent. Atlanta obviously supposed to be a little further along than a team like the Pacers, and they have their own issues, but there's more results there to look at. There's a lot more excitement, I would say. Even a team like Atlanta, however you feel about Trae Young, and the nucleus of him and DeJounte Murray, like you just look up and down that roster, AJ Griffin, Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson. There's several young guys that you can just pick out of a hat on that team that's exciting for the future and you can look forward to. And the Pacers are obviously filled with the same thing. And then you pan over the Chicago Bulls team, who's
fun exercise. Name me one player that is exciting on the Chicago Bulls. Is Alex Caruso? I love Alex Caruso. He's been awesome. Would you qualify him as exciting?
I would, just
okay,
because
fair. I'll
the
give
way
you
he's
that
playing
one.
this year specifically. I mean,
give me someone right now the way they are playing that's not named Alex Caruso that we would consider exciting. Because I like DeMar DeRozan. He's a very good, solid basketball player, but
he hasn't been exciting this year.
He's also kind of a boring good. Like he's the mid-range jumper, the occasional three. Like
until the last 2 minutes, then he's not exciting.
Like Zach LaVine has looked anything but exciting the last week, and clearly just doesn't want to be there. Like I like Kobe White. He's not excited. There is no excitement in the Chicago Bulls basketball team.
Well, that's what
outside of Alex Caruso.
Right. And that's what you hope to get from a guy, that's why a guy like Patrick Williams, you just want to see the athleticism on full display and a guy playing with a high motor. And I think I would maybe push back a little bit on Kobe. I think he has his moments of being exciting, especially.
I like Kobe, but like consistently, I wouldn't say that.
Right. Because he has times where he just disappears during the game. I would say, like the game that we just watched against Miami, even though the Bulls ended up losing by 18, I believe it was. Kobe, has 20, is hitting, 4 or so threes. He's flying down. He had a poster dunk the game before that on Orlando, or 2 games before that. And 2 games before that, he had that poster dunk. So there's moments there, but what you're saying, point very much taken, right? Which is like,
this isn't an exciting team.
There's not a lot of guys you look at on this roster that you get pumped about. And even especially so, because I think the way you really have to think about this is look at like Atlanta that we just talked about. If Clint Capella were to leave that team, they were to trade him, then you're super excited about the fact that Onyeka Okongwu is going to get more minutes because he's shown a lot off the bench. And you're saying like he is their long-term answer at that position. Same thing with, just potentially as you see increased minutes for a guy like Jalen Johnson, who's flashed even more and more. Like there's guys on that team where you're like, oh, I'm excited to see them get more minutes in the years to come. Yeah. When you look at the Bulls, I mean, Patrick Williams has been given all the minutes in the world. Can't do anything with it. I'm not excited to see if the Bulls blow it up to see more Dalen Terry minutes right now. Not excited to see, I'm a little bit Julian Phillips, but like you said, it's not exciting.
There's nobody exciting. Yeah. That I'm excited to see get more time.
Yeah.
Than Alex Caruso, who's 29.
Right. Alex Caruso is exciting. And he is this year exciting because I think you would have to be kind of like, an NBA. I think you have to be an NBA nerd. And while I would say he's exciting the past couple of years, you just got to love like watching defense and things like that. Yeah. But if we're talking about like just, the average couch goer who's exciting, he is this year. But
he hasn't historically been.
Right. It says a lot that he's the one guy. All right.
Where do we want to go next? What other depressing topic do we want to cover?
Well, I was just so that's all it is, right? I think the idea that I was jealous watching these teams, and it's always bad when you hit that point of watching any game you turn on pretty much feels like your team's far below the level
Hmm.
of play that you're experiencing in these other games, and the back and forth action and the late game decision making and clutch shot making, and seeing a young guy like Tyrese Maxey do it, and just having that sense of hopelessness. Like, where is this for the Chicago Bulls? Where is this even going to come from? Like we just talked about, if they blow it up, what are you getting that
No
I'm
one.
I'm going to have this same feeling that I have watching other teams? I don't know. It's, and you said it earlier, man. Like, you get more. This team makes you like angry, like watching this team, because I mean, part of it is there is like obvious talent on the roster that just doesn't click together, and
Hmm.
they seem to have tuned out. But also, yeah, it's a frustrating group to watch, and I don't remember the last time I was watching a Bulls team with just this much angst. Like, it would have to go back probably to the Boylan
Yeah.
time. But even that, you had the young guys that we were talking about earlier that you could have some hope in.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna keep going back to the Zach LaVine thing, but like letting this get so toxic, at least publicly, I think is just. I mean, obviously this team is going nowhere, but like it's helped lead to that dysfunction and that tuning out really fast because everybody knows that this is coming to an end, but everybody also kind of knows that like realistically, you're probably waiting till at least December 15th to make the move because of contractual kind of contract limitations on people you might want to acquire. But now you're just in this dead period for a month where everybody knows what's coming. Zach clearly doesn't want to be there. The core doesn't really fit together, anyways. Like, it's hard to play with a guy like that who doesn't want to be there and isn't going to be there. And it's also hard to be that guy and play with a team and play on a team that you don't want to be there. Like, letting this get as bad as it did publicly, I think was a very bad move on both sides. Like, it's unfortunate that this couldn't have been some sort of handshake agreement kept quiet between the two sides. I know that's not necessarily how things work, but like letting it get this bad this quick was a major, I think, mishap for the Bulls because now teams know that teams are going to know they're desperate to move him. That's going to kind of drive down his price. Zach is playing like, I won't swear, crap. I'll say crap right now, and that's going to drive down his price a little bit. Like, the Bulls just lost all their leverage and they're losing value.
Right. I think, yeah, when you look at the Zach LaVine situation, which I feel like on the show, on the last show, when we, mainly just talked about his soft launch trade request or
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it, we kind of praised at least the fact that, okay, he's always been a professional. He's
Hmm.
always, the Bulls have that going for them. I wasn't necessarily worried about his play diminishing too greatly. And he's always been somebody who has worn the name on his chest, and been okay about the fact that even though
Yeah.
it's a losing Bulls team, I'm going to represent this city and I'm going to represent this team. And the bump in the road that we saw, and we didn't talk about this because it happened after our last show. It happened over the weekend, and it's not something I want to like labor on too long because I think there's a world where some of it was blown up a little bit more than it should be, but
Hmm.
I still think it meant a lot, and it was something that needs to be discussed. Was at the end of that game against the Miami Heat, which bizarrely was a big comeback win for Chicago. They were down 22 to
Hmm.
1 in the beginning of that game. They look completely dead, and as they have done many times before, their second unit comes in, gives them a jolt, and we saw them carry the energy as the game went on, and bring that down and to tie the game, I believe, with like, I don't know, a minute left or so. And then all of a sudden, the Bulls find themselves up in the final minute. And it was a big win, like considering all the things that this team has gone through this year and the
Hmm.
way that they've played, like that was a good win. Yes, Miami kind of handed it over to them because when you lose a 22 to 1 lead and you lose a game like that, that says a lot
Hmm.
too about the way that Miami performed for the rest of the game. But the Bulls had to take it, and they did. And so then after that game, what happens? Well, everyone's celebrating on the floor. They're excited. It was an emotional win for a team that's been through a lot. And Zach kind of turns his back to everybody, goes straight towards the locker room. And a PR staff member for the Chicago Bulls is seen. This is all on the broadcast, on the
Hmm.
NBC broadcast, is seen trying to kind of grab his arm to direct him to go toward the NBC Sports Chicago team to have the post game interview. And LaVine kind of, brushes her off, continues to walk straight, shakes his head, keeps going. It looks angry. Like there's nothing you can go watch the clip. It's clear that LaVine looks frustrated.
Hmm.
So it was, it was a bad look. I can't emphasize enough how much of a bad look it was. There's no doubt about it that it was rude, that it seemed unprofessional, and some people, tried to come to his defense and been like, and people like come at people like me for saying it looks unprofessional, for saying it's not the right thing to do, and saying
Mhm.
like this is why no one likes the media, and this is he doesn't want to talk to the broadcaster, do the interview, whatever. He's a $215 million player. He's supposed to be the face of the franchise. This happens all the time. This is part of the job. PR staff members go up. It's not, then people were like, "Oh, she grabbed him." Blah blah. No, this is how it works. Like
Yep.
these members go up. You watch on a football field when everyone's scrambling. PR person's like shoving the player,
Yeah.
toward the
That's always
mic.
how it happens.
This is how it works. She was trying to just do her job, and he clearly, was disrespecting that to an extent. So it was a bad look, and it was a weird look considering everything that we've known about LaVine up until this point. It was unexpected. He's not normally somebody who is unprofessional, like we said, and it's hard not to look at a situation like that, even though I should say Casey Johnson of ABC Sports Chicago said that Zach LaVine apologized to that staff member. There were reports from Joe Cowley, from Casey Johnson, from beat reporters on the scene that the coaching staff was not happy about it, that the front office wasn't happy about it. It was handled internally.
Mhm.
And yes, LaVine apologized. Right after the game, he said it was a miscommunication. It's not a miscommunication.
It wasn't a miscommunication. He just didn't want to do it.
Yeah, in my opinion, he just didn't want to do it. And so, yes, it seems like amends were made, but it was weird, right, Matt? Like this is not stuff we see from LaVine, and it's hard not to see that and go like, what is the next month and to 2 months going to look like as we wait for them to find a deal?
Yeah, like I don't know. That's why I just keep coming back to like if you're going to make this decision 12 games into the year, that means you were comfortable with making this decision this offseason. You kind of knew the writing was on the wall. Just the timing of this is, I feel like, couldn't have been worse. It's what every Chicago sports franchise for the most part. Wouldn't say every. I will say it's what the Bulls, it's what the Bears, it's what the White Sox always kind of do, and it's like this 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach. And half measures in sports and in life just don't work, and that seems to be what the Zach LaVine approach this year was. It was a half measure, and now it's probably going to backfire, and already is kind of starting to backfire on the court. I hope it doesn't backfire in the return that they get.
Right, and it's tough because I think I understand some of the frustration that he has. Like it's easy to.
I get it too. I understand it. I understand that he would want out, but like.
But you have to handle yourself with
and quite honestly, like I keep going back to that on the bull side, but if 12 games into the year, Zach LaVine was also saying like, yeah, I'm ready to go. That means this offseason he would have been ready to go if the right deal came to itself. And like those types of decisions don't get made over the course of 11 games. And if you're making that decision that quickly into a season, that means you're already pretty comfortable with it and came to terms that that's a possibility.
And you're right to say it puts, not only is this bad from the Bulls to let it get to this point as early as it did in the season, because now it's just a waiting game for a month and a half to 2 months, waiting for some trade to be found, and then potentially getting into more situations like this one where even though you win a game, even though, this is supposed to be at least a fun moment in the season of a season that's probably not going to be filled with many, it's immediately ruined by the player who seemingly wants to get traded, just taking away the spotlight in a sense, whatever.
Yep.
I mean, this was something that was immediately on SportsCenter. This was something that was immediately on House of Highlights. Like everyone was like, look at what LaVine did after the game.
Yeah, this wasn't just a Chicago story.
No, this was everyone in the country realizing like, oh, LaVine wants out. Oh, LaVine, and it adds a level of drama around the organization that nobody wants because it's already dramatic, it's already bad, there's already huge problems. So then when you sprinkle in the off the court stuff, it gets real testy. And I think that this probably isn't going to be something that dominoes and we see more LaVine antics like this, because like I said, I do genuinely believe at the like our deep down past the surface, like He is a good dude. He doesn't
Oh, I
want to.
agree with that. I think this is probably an isolated incident. We're not
Yeah,
going
I
to
don't
like
think
you
he
said. He's
wants
not
to
going to
be this
snowball into
guy.
this. No,
Yeah, he doesn't want to be this guy. He doesn't want to be Harden who, puts on a fat suit and throws the ball out of bounds to try to push his way out of somewhere faster than normal. Like,
no. I think Zach LaVine's a good. I think he's a good teammate. I think he's a good person. I think he's a good player. But I just think like anything or anyone in life in any profession, when you know the end is near and you're kind of
right.
like a lame duck at a spot, naturally you're not going to be your best self. Like that's just a thing. That's not him. That's not anybody. Like or that's
Well, that
everybody.
yeah, and that I want to talk. So I want to get into that and how it's potentially impacted on the court in a second. The last thing I'll say about the off-court drama is that it was funny to me that Clutch CEO Rich Paul ends up speaking out about what happened with Levine. Which again goes to show this wasn't just a small Chicago story. Like
Yeah,
this was one of those things that's big. So Shams Charania on Run It Back on FanDuel TV, he ended up sharing a message from Clutch CEO Rich Paul, who spoke on the matter. This is what Rich Paul sent to Charania. He said, "This is being blown out of proportion. That actually happens more times than not. It's just the timing of it with the trade talks makes it out to be something that it's not. Players run away avoiding post-game interviews all the time. If this was something that happens all the time, if this was not a big deal, if it was blown out of proportion, why did the Levine apologize? Why
yeah,
did I mean, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just silly because I think that's the only time when I go like maybe there is more of this coming because Clutch is like who cares? This is this is what we're gonna do to try to get our guy out of here. We're gonna tell him to maybe act this way, whatever.
for sure.
But it's not normal. And I thought in that same episode of Run It Back on FanDuel TV, Chandler Parsons, who is a former NBA player, obviously, who appears on that panel on that show, I thought it was interesting that he immediately kind of pushed back on after Charania read that comment from Clutch, and he was like he said that was crazy to not the response but the video of
The
Levine,
video, yeah,
and
what he
he
did.
said you don't turn down. He said, usually you do not, I quote, usually you did not turn down the on-court interviews in front of everybody because even if he's not in trade rumors, it's a bad look to do that. And to storm out like that. So this, I wouldn't say is the norm. That's what that's what he said. So to those that were kind of coming to Levine's defense saying, it is what it is. He could blow off the interview. It's just not normal. It's not what guys do. And he's under a microscope now for the next month and a half. So anytime he does anything out of the norm, it's gonna be
Hmm.
it's gonna be something that's talked about.
Yeah, I just
But yeah, the on-court stuff, right? There's something that I wanted to touch on with that is, and this expands to the whole team, but Levine is kind of at the root of it, in my opinion. I wrote this earlier at BleacherNation.com if you want to go over there to read more. The headline was simple. It was, I can't believe it's this hard for the Chicago Bulls to make layups. So if you want to read the full post, it's there. But it is truly baffling that it's been this hard for the Chicago Bulls to make layups. They're averaging, so this is how they shoot a lot of layups. Okay, they wanted to live in the paint this season. That was something they preached relentlessly heading into the year. Billy Donovan said he wants to create a lot of his offense from driving kicks, from penetrating and getting into the teeth of the defense. They're averaging 34% of their field goal attempts at the rim this season, which is the 11th most in the NBA. That data comes from Cleaning the Glass. One of the many problems with that, however, is, like I said, they're not making these attempts. They're not generating efficient offense from doing this. Their average is just 61.1% at the rim
mhm.
this season, which is 26 in the NBA. They're behind only rebuilding teams like the Detroit Pistons, Memphis Grizzlies, Portland Trailblazers, and New York Knicks. So they're shooting the 11th most attempts at the rim per game. They're making the fourth fewest or the fifth fewest in the league. And it's been extremely ugly. If you watch any Bulls game, you see Levine driving to the rim, just shanking, layups. You see Vucevic kind of back to what we saw 2 years ago, which was a big problem, where his little turnaround hook shots just aren't falling in the way that we've grown accustomed to. And when
Mhm.
you look specifically at Levine's numbers, or I guess before I even point that out, what I should say is the one thing this Bulls team has had going for them since the inception of this core was the fact that they were an efficient offense. Like, yes, it wasn't leading to the wins or whatever, but the one thing they could hang their hat on was like, we have three guys who actually are scoring at a very
Yeah,
efficient rate. They were 12th in effective field goal percentage last season. Vucevic had a career high effective field goal percentage. DeRozan and Levine had the second highest effective field goal percentage of their careers. Again, it was a problem that wasn't collectively leading to wins, but these were guys who were at least playing well offensively and doing the job that you would expect them to do on that end of the floor. Now the Bulls' effective field goal percentage this season ranks 29th in the NBA, behind
Not
only
great.
the Portland Trailblazers, the rebuilding Portland Trailblazers with Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons, who obviously are not a tank. They're just bad. They're not a good team.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. They've dropped from 12th in effective field goal percentage to 29th this season, and that's a big reason for that is because of the fact that they are just missing these layups and missing these shots at the rim. LaVine's numbers in particular now, I'll give you. He's currently converting his shots that are within 3 feet of the basket. So again, basically at the rim at 62.7%. While I know that's like, oh, that might sound good. It's not. It's the
It's not.
It's his worst shooting percentage at the rim in 4 years. It's a massive departure from the 69.5 field goal percentage on shots within 3 feet of the rim over his past 3 seasons, right? So he was shooting 69.5 on average the last 3 years. He's down to 62. All right. That's a huge drop off. And Vucevic, I mentioned him earlier. He's also struggling. He's nailing just 62.5% of his shots within 3 feet of the rim. And that's his worst clip since the 17-18 campaign. And to put that further into perspective, the last 2 years, Vucevic was shooting at least 70%, which is way more closer to what you want to see from a big man. So, Matt, it's just like befuddling is the word I used. I can't believe that even though this team, yes, it stinks. I get it. Like
I can't believe how bad it is.
Yeah, that's what I can't believe.
I thought when they were running it back, I was like, okay, whatever. It's going to be like last year. They're going to be like 40 and 42, and they're going to win some games they shouldn't, and then most of the time just kind of be annoying, but like they won't really be offensively bad or anything. Nope, it's gotten significantly worse, and I think it's significantly worse because the big three, and I'm never going to say big three again without air quotes. In every post I write, I have to put it in air quotes too.
I do too.
They're not a big three, but like they're just a different group this year. And I think they deep down knew that it wasn't going to work again because they don't really go together. And I don't know, like the Zach thing just needs to happen because it's a fresh start for everybody. It's a fresh start for that, the people that stay on the Bulls. The elephant in the room is no longer there. There's no longer a black cloud hanging over, whatever metaphor you want to use. Like, I feel like this team just needs that, even though as good of a player as he is, the end is here. And you just need to get to it.
Well, yeah, what I would say too is, which is kind of like what I feel like inferred earlier, is it's hard not to think that when you're just shooting this poorly at the rim for a team that naturally shoots very well, all things considered, or has guys who, like we said, even though it doesn't lead to wins, they are notoriously they're known for being efficient scorers.
Yeah.
When they're not doing that, when they're 29th in effective field goal percentage, when they're missing point blank layups, it's hard not to think that's just a mental gymnastics game.
Yes,
but that's just
completely. That's what they look like. They all look like they are just kind of going through the motions until this is settled.
Right, because we know it's. I mean, I've thought about it as I've watched games just to be sure. I mean, that's always what I originally thought is like this team's just checked out in a way. Like they're just not. Their heart's not in it because you're missing layups. But if you even just watch like what are defenses doing, obviously like Miami, they have talented defenders. Like each game's different, but it's not like these teams are doing anything that just make these guys miss layups. Like they're just
missing.
They're
the Magic game I was at, the amount of, and that was I think the first one after LaVine's trade request, whatever. The amount of just easy missed layups to missed dunks that he just completely whiffed on, completely messed up. It was just mind-boggling.
Well,
it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, in that game, I think he was like 0 for 5 from the paint,
he was terrible.
And he missed a dunk, and that was just crazy. And DeRozan has been, he's done a better job over the past few games of being more efficient inside. But I mean, LaVine, I read it. I just read it. It's crazy, and especially with him, it's hard not to think it's a mental game. And of course, he's never going to say that. I don't even think he might consciously believe that. He doesn't realize it's probably impacting him in the way that it does. But when this is how things are going behind the scenes, and when you talk about how can that impact on things on the floor, this is the way it does that, I think, just because you're playing and the slow starts are another thing that's probably indicative of this. I mean, they've always had problems in a way, but the slow starts are representative of a team that is not coming out with enough
Hmm.
fire, with enough energy and enough belief in their ability. They have to get down double digits before they feel something, before they feel anything. They have to see a deficit that's like 15 points.
Hey, on the
So
bright side, the schedule really lightens up here.
yeah, exactly, right. So at least there's that they have that going for them. Yeah,
Oh, when I was doing the weekly preview on Monday, I knew the easier stretch was coming to an end, but then I saw the 4 games this week, and I was like, oh,
right.
this isn't going to go well.
If you thought 5-10 was bad and things have been bad to start the year,
Wait till
just
you
keep
see
on.
5-16.
Yeah, exactly. Just buckle up because these next couple of honestly, all the way until the calendar flips to
Yeah,
2024, this is going to be
it's
a
brutal,
brutal stretch. And that's
brutal.
why earlier I probably talked about it on this podcast, but I wrote about it for sure over at Bleacher Nation about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I wrote about how the this stretch before the one we're talking about right now was kind of I said it was going to be the beginning of the end,
Hmm.
and what do we see? We see LaVine's trade request. We see, a bunch of stuff happen. But the reason I wrote that primarily, not because I thought LaVine was going to have a soft launch of the trade request, but I thought, they had 7 of 8 games at the United Center.
Hmm.
So if they could not string together wins, if they could not come out above 500 during that stretch, then it was impossible to imagine that anything was gonna be kicked into high gear, knowing the schedule that was coming. How did
Yeah,
they do? They went 3-5 over that 8-game stretch.
not
Again,
good.
where 7 was at the United Center. A handful of those, the 4 straight games, they failed to score above 102 points. It was just a disaster for the most part. And if you think that was a tough part of the schedule, you're wrong because these upcoming games, Matt, you said it, the 4 this week. We're talking on the morning before the Oklahoma City Thunder game. So the Thunder obviously beat them by double digits on opening night. Shot 54% from the field, I believe, against the Bulls, sank 19 3-pointers. And OKC is still to this day shooting 41% from 3 on the season, the team as a whole, which is number 1 in the league. So that's terrifying for a team like the Bulls.
Hmm.
But they have OKC, Toronto, Brooklyn, Boston. Toronto and Brooklyn, well, I'll just put it this way. So the 16 or 17 games before the calendar flips to 2024, only 3 of those will be against teams that are below 500.
Sick.
And 2 of them are Toronto and Brooklyn. And
Nice.
Brooklyn's already beaten the Bulls, and
Toronto
Toronto
should have
almost beat
beat
the
the
Bulls.
Bulls.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Alex Caruso. The other one is against San Antonio Spurs. So if Wemby ends up like having, the
Oh,
game
the
of the
Spurs are winning that game.
they always beat
The
the Bulls.
Spurs are
So
absolutely winning that game.
yeah, Popovich is gonna make it happen.
Hmm.
So it's yeah, Matt, it's rough. And then so after this week, which ends with Boston, all games on the road, by the way. You
Mm.
have Milwaukee, the Pelicans, Milwaukee again, you have Denver, then you have Miami twice, then you have
That'll go
Philly,
well.
then you have the Lakers, then it's that Spurs game, then the Cavaliers, the Hawks, the Pacers, and Philly.
They might be like 5-20. They could like legitimately be about 5-20, 6-21, whatever the hell.
I think that yeah, I don't just like honestly I look at this and I don't disagree. Now the only thing you could say is last year the weird thing about this team was that they got up for the games against good opponents, but we
Yeah.
haven't even seen that this year. So
No.
it's the only thing that's been consistent at all with this team has been getting down by 20 points and then finally feeling like we said earlier, feeling something and trying to climb back into these games. But I don't have the confidence that this team will do what they did last year, playing against the Bucks of the world and those which we've already seen them play against the Bucks. But it could get really bad really fast, and that's saying something considering they're 5-10 and it already feels really bad.
This has been a fun show.
It's always fun, yeah.
I know.
Okay, well let's so yeah, that's the schedule. We don't need to look more into
Oh,
it. It's not going to be pretty,
no.
and the last kind of 2 things that I had that I want to touch on this show were first off going back to Zach LaVine. The rumors, we don't have any really new teams that have gotten into the mix thus far. Philly, LA, and who am I forgetting here? Philly, the Lakers, and Miami were the three that were
Hmm.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Philly, I that one seems tough to believe because a couple of reports have said that's, LaVine's probably not the type of player that they're looking to get. But the Lakers seem a little bit more of a legitimate possibility as a team that will continue to ramp up interest in him. The only other team that was mentioned over this past week or so was the Toronto Raptors. So that was an interesting one to be thrown out. Not necessarily surprised just because Masai Ujiri, the front office leader over there in
Hmm.
Toronto, is, he tries to be aggressive. We obviously remember what he did with Kawhi. LaVine isn't Kawhi, but he's somebody who, we'll definitely evaluate opportunities like this because, say what you will, about Toronto. I'm sure it is fun to play there. DeMar has great things to say about there. They're just not a free agent destination. So
Yeah.
when you have an opportunity to potentially add the level of talent of someone like Zach LaVine locked in long term,
You do it.
it's probably hard not to think
Yeah.
about it, right?
I'm with you. I think that it's logical. And I know we talk about the Bull. Like I've said a couple times, the Bulls and Raptors are kind of like the Spider-Man meme, like kind of the same thing. But like Toronto's been better. And what's different is Toronto has a young budding. I don't know if I'm going to call Scotty Barnes a superstar yet, but like a young budding player to build around. And if you go and get a Zach LaVine to play alongside of him, you actually kind of have something there. Like you kind of have something concrete to build around. So the deal makes all the sense in the world, I think, for them. I'm not sure exactly what's coming back. I'm not sure exactly they're parting with the salaries that are going to have to come back to counteract it. But I think if you have the opportunity, like you said, to get a locked up Zach LaVine long term and pair him alongside Scotty Barnes, I think that's a really, really good start when you're building a team.
Yeah, and I think too with LaVine, like he's or I should say with the Raptors is, he makes a lot of sense for what they're looking for. They have the defensive foundation. They have the immense amount of length. We've seen the Bulls have trouble with that all the time.
Hmm.
And they have a good screener, a good big man in Jakob Poeltl, and it's there's their offensive rating is 27th in the NBA, right? So that's the area they've never been able to figure out. They score, a lot in transition. Their half court offense is really muddy. Scotty Barnes, though, is a really gifted playmaker and passer. Pascal Siakam is the same way, and who knows if they would keep Siakam if they got someone like LaVine. I'm not saying they would trade Siakam for LaVine, but
Watch the Bulls
like
go
you
get
said,
Siakam per LaVine.
maybe somehow honestly not bad. The foundation for them moving forward of a Barnes LaVine duo would make a lot of sense, and especially with LaVine's off ball talent, just picturing him not only covered defensively by the wings that they have, but then having the playmakers like a Barnes or a Siakam to help set him up would definitely make sense. So you talk
Yeah.
about them being in a similar spot. The Raptors just already though have a team that can absorb Zach and make far more sense around him than what the
Hmm.
Bulls have built right now. So
Yeah.
I don't think it wouldn't be my first bet of a team that actually does go after it and do it. I think, the money is obviously a big deal. And Masai's a smart guy, so it just depends at the end of the day. What does he really think about Zach? I think Zach's a good player, and he should be viewed as someone you can build around. But I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see whether or not they actually go through with this. But their interest at the end of the day is just not surprising to me, and definitely something that I feel
Yeah.
like will continue over the next few months.
Yeah. The more
Speaking of
interested
which,
teams, the better.
right. And speaking of which, with a team like Toronto creeping in, I would just say there are more teams like Toronto, like that market size, I would say, which they do have a huge market technically because it's all of Canada, but they're not considered to be, the same
Yeah.
big market team. Um, I would just expect more teams like that to enter the mix. Like, I would not be surprised if a team like the Charlotte Hornets all of a sudden are registering interest.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be like, I just think there's so many teams out there that could actually surprise us by throwing their hat in the ring as the season goes on. I don't know. Some people think, Matt, that it's going to be like a small list the whole time. The Bulls are going to be pulling teeth to find a
No, I think
shooter.
a lot of
I
that.
really
I
don't
think
think that.
these. I no, I think your point about these small market teams, the opportunity to go out and like New Orleans, for an example, too. Like they're not a team that's really going to lure any big time free agent anytime soon. If they got a chance to go at a superstar who's locked up for 4 years, that's your big free agent signing. Yeah, you got to move some pieces. Yeah, you got to move out, whatever money, but this is your chance to go in and bring in a marquee player. And while Zach LaVine's not a superstar, he is kind of that next level. And they got to, like, for those small market teams to have a chance to go get a guy like that, that opportunity is not going to come around every year.
Yeah, that's why I just think more we're going to see guys talk. We're 15 games into the season, and that's why we talk about how frustrating it is that this is all happening this early. But that's why there's so much time left for a number of suitors to emerge and teams.
And they will.
Yeah, and for teams to talk themselves into it. So this overarching idea by some that he's not going to net them really any value or there's not going to be a lot of interest, I just think is forgetting how the NBA goes. If Harden can get Philly what Harden got them, LaVine can get the Bulls a fine return.
I'm with you.
All right, last thing here that I just want to mention is more love for Alex Caruso, Matt. He's been inserted into the starting lineup last Friday for the first time, and has the slow starts gotten any better? No, unfortunately. The team still isn't doing. It's not. But we knew this. I would say we knew, Matt, that not one fix is gonna. When you have the big three on the floor, there's not one thing that's gonna be able to fix them. But I have tremendous respect and appreciation for the way that Alex Caruso continues to play. It's been
guy just brings it every night.
Yeah, and I'm glad he's getting a chance to start. It just means a little bit more of him each game. I do think it was the right choice, and at this point in the season when you're desperate like that. Also just want to shout out that he's 21 of 42 from 3 to begin the season. So
anybody who wants a 3-and-D guard that's, defensive player of the year caliber and is hitting 50% of their threes and comes at a pretty low price. Cap hit, I should say. Why don't you give us a call?
Why don't you just give us a call first?
At 1-800-GO-BULLS.
Yeah. So Caruso, though, he scored double figures in 6 straight games with 2 or more threes in each of those games. First time he's done that in his career.
I was going to say, it's got to be the best stretch of his career.
It is. Yeah. You have to go back to 2013. Or sorry, not 2013. He wasn't even in the league. You have to go back to 2019 when he was with the Lakers to find the next longest stretch of double figure games, which was just 3. So this is the best stretch of his career. He continues to make a high level impact, and it pains me, the trade value is going up.
I know it's going to hurt to see him go, but that's by far the best value they're going to get. So you have to, because this is the bed the Bulls made.
Yeah, it is what it is, and I at least appreciate everything that he continues to give this team, because he makes them watchable for whatever minute he's on the floor. They're watchable for that period of time. Okay, that's I think where we're gonna wrap the show up for today. Like you said, Matt, real. I was chipper at the beginning. Now less so.
Yeah, I haven't really been. I'm chipper now that it's over and we don't have to talk about this team for the rest of the week.
Well, I'm
you know what I mean.
Off.
At least on
I
camera. We still have to write about them.
I'm about to get off to go write more about them, then watch them play the Thunder tonight, and just be sad.
At least we get to watch the Thunder play tonight. They're fun.
That's true.
I'm adopting them as my second.
We're at the point where we're looking forward to the opponents.
Yeah.
That's at least fun. Like the Spurs, can't wait to watch Wemby.
That'll be great.
Go up against them. Yeah, that'll be a good time. All right, Matt, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Anybody listening, enjoy the holiday, the holiday season. Eat a lot of food. Bulls tickets will probably be on a discount, but don't buy them. And
if you're buying them, buy them on the secondary market. Don't give the Bulls anymore.
Yeah, true. All right, that's where we're gonna wrap things up. We'll be back at this point. We're gonna be back next week, and we look forward to talking to you then. Kinda, maybe.
Happy Thanksgiving.